at that dinner table. Her hands were raised like she was calling down heaven, right in front of my plate. Lord, help Liana see the light. She needs a real family, Jesus. She needs to raise that child the right way. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but the words cut deep. I sat there in silence, my hands resting in my lap, fighting the urge to speak. I had promised myself I wouldn't cause a scene no matter what happened tonight. I told Micah I could handle it, that I just wanted dinner to go smoothly for Cairo's sake. But my stomach had been in knots all day, and now I knew why. Micah stared down at his food like he wanted to disappear. He didn't say anything. He never really does when it comes to his mom. He's always tried to keep the peace between us. But peace doesn't survive in places where one person is constantly at war with you. And Cairo, my sweet, wide-eyed boy, he was sitting right next to me, legs dangling off the edge of his chair, watching everything. I taught him to always be kind, to be patient, to stay calm when people were unkind. But I'd never expected him to be the one to speak. He looked up at her, his little voice soft but clear. Grandma, remember when you pushed Mommy and said I was a mistake? The room froze. Forks paused mid-air. Even the candles flickered like they knew something sacred had just been exposed. Micah's head snapped up. Ruthleen's hands dropped to the table. Her eyes widened just for a second before she forced a smile. Oh, honey, no, I didn't. But he wasn't finished. You did. Mommy cried in the kitchen and I heard you. You said she ruined your son's life. No one moved. Not my husband, not his two brothers, not even Ruthleen's long-suffering husband, who usually mumbled his way through conflict and pretended not to hear it. I hadn't planned for this. I never asked my son to carry my pain. I never told him what to remember or what to say. But he saw it all. He heard it all. Children always do. And in that moment, it was his voice, not mine, that told the truth. I could feel my chest tightening, not from shame, but from a deep, raw kind of sadness. The kind that builds when you spend years pretending something doesn't hurt so your child won't feel like they're the reason you're suffering. Ruthleen opened her mouth to say something else, but no words came out. There was no prayer to cover this, no holy-sounding speech to drown it out. Micah was looking at me now, really looking, like he finally saw all the silence I'd been holding. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small at that table. I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like a mother who had done everything in her power to shield her child from someone else's bitterness, and he still saw it. And instead of swallowing it down, he said it out loud. My name is Liana. I'm a wife, a mother, and the woman my mother-in-law loves to pretend doesn't belong in her family. But tonight something changed. Tonight the truth came out of a 7-year-old's mouth, and it cracked open everything we had been trying to keep quiet for years. Let me tell you how we got here. I met Micah at an art exhibit during my 2nd year of working as a gallery assistant in Chicago. I was 25, trying to rebuild my life after everything I thought I had planned had fallen apart. Cairo was 6 months old at the time, and I was doing it all on my own. Micah was different from anyone I'd ever known, quiet but warm. Not the kind of man who tried to impress you with big gestures, but the kind who noticed when your coat slipped off your chair and picked it up for you without saying a word. He never looked at me like I was someone with baggage. He looked at me like I was someone who had survived. We started dating after a few months of running into each other at gallery events. I told him about Cairo early on, half expecting him to back away. Instead, he asked to meet him. The first time Micah held Cairo, I watched something shift in both of them. Cairo giggled and grabbed Micah's glasses. Micah grinned and held him tighter. That night, I cried on the couch after Cairo went to sleep. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time, it felt like maybe we could be a real family. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony in Lincoln Park. Just close friends, a few of my cousins and Micah's brothers. His parents didn't come. They said it was because they were concerned about how fast everything was moving. But I knew what it really was. Ruthleen, his mother, had already made it clear from day one that I didn't fit her idea of the woman Micah should be with. I wasn't from the right side of town. I didn't grow up in church. I had a child from another relationship. And I didn't ask for her approval. At first, she masked it with politeness. That fake kind of smile people wear when they're talking to someone they don't like in public. I tried to be patient. I tried to earn her respect. We visited them for dinner a few times after the wedding. Every time we came over, she'd find small ways to remind me I wasn't one of them. She'd make a separate meal for Micah, saying it was just how he liked it growing up. She'd ask about my job and then follow it up with, "That must be a fun hobby, but are you planning something more stable with Cairo getting older?" And then there were the moments she didn't think anyone was listening. Once, while I was in the kitchen refilling Cairo's cup, I heard her whispering to her husband in the hallway. She trapped him. That boy isn't even his blood. Micah could have had a real family if he hadn't rushed into this. I didn't say anything that day. I wanted to. But I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Micah knew things were tense, but he never heard those comments. And when I told him, he tried to explain it away. She's old-fashioned. She'll come around. She just needs time. Time became years. 3 years into our marriage, we moved to a quieter suburb closer to Micah's hometown. He'd gotten a great offer at a creative agency, and we thought it would be good for Cairo to have space and community. I hoped that being closer would help Ruthleen see the kind of mother I was, the kind of family we were building. But the closer we got, the harder it became to pretend. She started showing up uninvited, offering parenting advice I never asked for. She told Cairo not to call Micah Dad in front of extended family because it confuses people. She once corrected him mid-sentence when he called Micah his dad, saying, "You mean Micah, sweetie." I had to pull Cairo into the bedroom after that and hold him until he stopped crying. He didn't understand why someone who gave him birthday presents and hugged him at church didn't want him to feel like he belonged. Micah confronted her that time. She apologized with a tone that didn't sound sorry at all and brought over a pie the next day like that, fixed it. Still, I stayed polite. I stayed quiet. Because I thought that's what strong women did. They didn't start fights. They didn't stir up drama. But something in me had been shifting. Every little comment, every backhanded prayer, every sideways glance in front of Cairo, it started adding up. And when Ruthleen invited us over for Sunday dinner, saying she wanted to bless the family, I felt it in my bones that something wasn't right. Micah thought it was a peace offering. He was tired of the tension and just wanted to have a meal where no one raised their voice. I agreed to go. Not because I believed she'd changed, but because I wanted to show my son what grace looked like, even in the face of rejection. I dressed in a soft blue dress, tied Cairo's shoes, and smiled through the whole drive. But under that smile was a fire I had kept buried for too long. This time, I wasn't going to run from the storm. I just didn't know that the one to confront it wouldn't be me. It would be the child they said didn't belong, and everything would change from there. The day of the dinner felt heavy before we even left the house. I woke up early, made breakfast, packed Cairo's overnight bag just in case, and stood in front of the mirror for a long time before getting dressed. I chose a soft cream sweater and jeans. Nothing fancy, but still presentable. I wanted to look calm, even though my chest felt tight. Cairo was bouncing around like he always did, asking if there would be dessert and whether he could sit next to Grandpa Hal. He didn't ask if Grandma Ruthleen would be there. He already knew. Micah was quiet as he drove. He kept glancing over at me like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. That silence wasn't new. Whenever tension crept between me and his mother, he tried to smooth it over by pretending it didn't exist. I think part of him believed if no one talked about it, it would eventually disappear. We pulled into the driveway just before 5. Ruthleen's house looked picture perfect from the outside. Fresh flowers in pots by the door, a welcome sign shaped like a cross, and a wreath decorated with tiny porcelain angels. Everything looked warm and inviting until you stepped inside. The smell of roast chicken and cornbread filled the air, but it didn't soften the energy. The moment Ruthleen opened the door, her eyes scanned my outfit. She smiled politely, kissed Micah on the cheek, and crouched to greet Cairo. "Well, there's my little man," she said. "My, you're getting tall. Just like you're growing up fast." Her voice trailed off before she could say father. I caught it. Cairo caught it too. He looked at her, then at me. I gave him a gentle smile and rubbed his back. Micah tried to lighten the mood. "Dinner smells great, Mom." "Of course it does," she said, already turning back toward the kitchen. "This family deserves the best." We sat down a few minutes later. The table was set beautifully. Fine china, real cloth napkins, even name cards, as if we were guests at a wedding. I was seated across from Ruthleen, Cairo beside me, Micah to my right. Her husband Hal sat at the head of the table, mostly silent as always. The conversation started simple. Work updates, neighborhood news, weather. Then it shifted. "So, Liana," she said sweetly, cutting her chicken with careful precision, "I noticed on your Instagram that Cairo was at a paint and sip event. Isn't that for adults?" "It was a kid-friendly version," I answered calmly. "They had juice boxes instead of wine. He had a great time." She tilted her head. Well, I'm just saying. Some things don't need to be posted online, especially when it reflects how we raise our children." Micah looked up but didn't say anything. I swallowed the irritation rising in my throat. He was painting sunflowers and talking about how colors make him feel. I think that's something to be proud of. She smiled again, tight and cold. "Of course. It's just different from how I raised my boys. Structure, discipline, routine, but to each her own." I looked at Micah. Nothing. He kept chewing. Then came the moment that changed the air in the room. Ruthleen folded her hands and said, "Before we eat, I'd like to say grace." With a special intention for Liana's heart, I froze. My fork was halfway to my mouth. Cairo looked at me. I could feel my pulse in my throat. She closed her eyes and started praying. "Lord, we thank you for this food, for the hands that prepared it, and we ask you now to shine your light on those among us who are still finding their way. Liana needs guidance, Father. She needs your hand to raise her child in a godly way. And Lord, we ask you to surround her with a real family, a righteous family, one rooted in your word." I sat completely still. Every word felt like a slap. She didn't even try to hide it. She turned a prayer into an accusation, and everyone just let her. Micah kept his eyes on the table. Hal closed his eyes like he agreed. The room was quiet except for her voice. I wanted to scream. I wanted to push back, flip my plate, or get up and leave. But something kept me in that chair. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe I had finally reached the point where words just weren't enough anymore. Then I noticed Cairo. His little fingers were curled around the edge of the table. His eyes were on her. He wasn't confused. He understood exactly what she was doing. He had seen enough. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't protecting him by staying silent. I was showing him that it was okay to be disrespected as long as you stayed polite. I had spent so much time trying to keep things civil that I forgot what it looked like to stand tall. But I didn't need to say anything that night, because Cairo already had, and what he said next would stop everything. I sat in that dining room chair trying to hold everything together. My spine was stiff, my hands in my lap. I had trained myself to stay quiet in moments like this, to take the high road, to be the bigger person. But inside, something was splintering. I glanced at Cairo. He hadn't moved since the prayer ended. His lips were pressed into a thin line. His little brows were furrowed, the way they get when he's concentrating hard. He was staring straight across the table at Ruthleen. She was unfolding her napkin, acting like her words hadn't just landed like rocks in the middle of our meal. Hal passed her the bread. She took it with a smile. Micah kept chewing. No one said a word about what had just happened, until Cairo did. He looked up and said, in a voice louder than the quiet tension in the room, "Grandma, remember when you pushed Mommy and said I was a mistake?" I blinked. My heart stopped. I felt the whole table freeze. Forks hovered midair. The soft clink of Hal's spoon dropping into his bowl was the only sound. Ruthleen looked stunned. Her eyes flicked to Cairo, then to me. Her face went pale, and then she forced a chuckle, like she'd misheard. "What, sweetie?" Cairo didn't back down. "You said Mommy ruined Uncle Micah's life. You pushed her. She was crying." He wasn't making it up. It had happened 6 months ago. We were in Ruthleen's hallway after she'd pulled me aside to lecture me again about how I was raising Cairo. She said I was letting him act too soft, that he needed discipline, that I was making Micah choose between being a father and being a man. I had turned away, trying to leave the conversation, and she shoved me back with one hand on my shoulder. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to make me stumble, enough to make me cry. I didn't know Cairo had seen it. He had been playing with blocks on the floor just inside the living room, quiet and unnoticed. He saw everything. Micah was staring at Cairo now like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Ruthleen's face twisted in a mix of denial and panic. Now, I don't know what you think you saw, baby, but I would never hurt your mother. You did, Cairo said again, his voice shaking now. You said I was a mistake, that Daddy deserved better. You made Mommy cry. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, and all I could do was reach for Cairo's hand under the table and hold it. He gripped mine back, strong and steady. Micah pushed his chair back. The legs scraped against the floor loudly, jolting everyone. He stood slowly and looked directly at his mother. Did you say that? He asked. His voice was calm, but his jaw was clenched. Ruthleen opened her mouth. Micah, don't be ridiculous. I would never... Cairo wouldn't lie, he said firmly. He remembers what he saw. I've let a lot of things slide over the years. But if you said that to Liana, and especially if you said that about our son, you owe them both an apology. Ruthleen looked at him like he had betrayed her. You're going to take her side? She's turning you against your own mother. She's manipulating you. Micah didn't flinch. Number. She didn't say anything. Cairo did. Our 7-year-old son told the truth. And for once, I'm listening. He turned to me then, and something in his eyes shifted. For the first time in years, I saw him truly see me, not just as his wife, but as someone who had been carrying this alone for far too long. I should have stood up sooner, he said quietly. I nodded. That was all I needed. Ruthleen stood now too. If you're going to choose her over your own family, then maybe you don't belong at this table either. Micah didn't respond right away. He looked down at Cairo, then back at me. Then he said, "This is my family." The words landed with finality. He didn't shout them. He didn't storm out. He simply said what needed to be said. Cairo leaned into me, resting his head on my arm. I kissed the top of his curls and held him close. Ruthleen stood there, hands shaking, eyes wide. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. The room had turned on her, not in cruelty, but in quiet truth. Micah placed his napkin on his plate and said, "We're leaving." He took my hand. I picked up Cairo's backpack, and we walked out of that house without looking back. Outside, the air was cold, but it felt clean. Micah opened the car door for Cairo and helped him buckle in. Then he turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said again. I looked at him and nodded. Thank you for hearing him. That night, it wasn't about me finding my voice. It was about Cairo finding his, and about the man I married finally choosing to listen. The turning point wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came from a 7-year-old who had been watching everything, quietly holding the truth, until the moment came when he couldn't hold it anymore. And in that moment, everything started to change. We didn't say much in the car. Cairo fell asleep on the way home, his head resting against the car seat window. I turned in my seat to watch him breathe. His chest moved up and down slowly, his curls falling over his forehead. He looked so peaceful, like someone who had finally let go of something heavy. I turned back toward the road. Micah's hands were tight on the wheel. His knuckles were white. He didn't speak until we pulled into our driveway. "I didn't know," he said. I really didn't. I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to say something that sounded like blame, not in that moment. "I know you didn't," I finally said. "But I did. I've been carrying it the whole time." He put the car in park and stared straight ahead. "I let her do it," he said quietly. "I let her push you to the edge, and I stood there thinking I was keeping the peace. But really, I was just afraid. I thought if I said something, I'd be choosing between you and her. And I didn't want to lose either of you." I reached over and put my hand over his. "You didn't lose anything," I said. "You just finally chose." He nodded. There was pain in his eyes, but also clarity. Something had shifted inside him that couldn't be undone. We carried Cairo inside and tucked him into bed. I kissed his forehead and whispered thank you into his ear. He stirred a little, but didn't wake up. Micah sat with me on the couch afterward. We didn't turn on the TV. We just sat in the quiet of our home, a real quiet, not the uncomfortable silence that used to sit between us when his mother was the topic we avoided. Then he asked the question I had waited so long to hear. "What do you want to do now?" I didn't need to think about it. I had already made peace with the answer. "I don't want to go back there," I said. "I don't want to sit at another one of her tables pretending we're a family when she doesn't see me or our son as hers. I won't let Cairo keep thinking he has to earn her love. He deserves better than that. So do I." Micah looked at me for a long time, and then he said the one thing I never imagined coming out of his mouth. "Then we won't go back. I'll talk to her. I'll make it clear. If she wants to be part of our lives, it'll be on respectful terms. Or not at all." A quiet relief swept over me. Not joy, not celebration, just relief. Because I finally felt like I wasn't the only one standing up for our family. 3 days later, Ruthleen showed up at our door. I was surprised. We hadn't spoken since that dinner, and I wasn't sure if I ever expected to see her face again. Micah answered the door. He didn't invite her in. He stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind him. I watched through the front window. Their voices were low, their expressions tense. Her arms crossed. His hand pointed toward the street once. He stood taller than I'd ever seen him stand in front of her. After 10 minutes, she turned and walked back to her car. She didn't look up at the window. She didn't say goodbye. Micah came back in, looking tired but calm. "She wanted to explain herself," he said. "Said she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that she was just trying to do what's best." I laughed once, sharp and dry. "She still thinks she's the victim," I said. "Yeah," he replied. But I told her, "No more judgment, no more passive-aggressive comments, no more treating you or Cairo like you're not real family. If she can't accept that, then she's not welcome. Not now. Not ever." That night, we had dinner as a family of 3. Spaghetti and garlic bread. Cairo told us about a story he was writing in school, where the hero was a boy who saves his mom from a dragon by telling the truth. He said he named the dragon after a woman named Ruth. I almost dropped my fork. Micah and I laughed so hard we cried. There was no dramatic confrontation, no apology wrapped in roses, just truth. Spoken clearly, held firm, and backed by action. That was the real change. Not in Ruthleen's heart, but in ours. Micah wasn't just my husband anymore. He was my partner. And Cairo wasn't just my little boy. He was the one who reminded both of us that silence isn't the answer. The real climax wasn't her walking out of her own dining room. It wasn't even Cairo speaking up at the table. It was what happened afterward. When we stopped pretending, when we chose each other fully, and when we stopped giving power to someone who didn't know how to love us right. That was the moment everything changed for good. It's been almost a year since that dinner. Ruthleen hasn't been to our home since. She hasn't asked to see Cairo. She sends the occasional birthday card with a scripture written in neat cursive, but no real apology has ever come. That used to bother me. I thought closure needed to come from her. I thought peace meant getting her approval. I was wrong. Peace came the moment I stopped begging for something she was never going to give. Her love came with conditions I was never meant to meet. The moment I let that go, I felt light again. Micah followed through. He held the boundary, not just with his words, but with his choices. He didn't fold when his brothers started calling and asking why we were being dramatic. He didn't flinch when his dad said, "You know how your mother is." He looked them in the eye and said, "This is my wife. That's my son. If you can't love them, you don't get access to me." That mattered more than I can explain. For years, I fought this battle quietly, thinking I had to absorb every slight for the sake of the marriage, for the sake of the family I wanted so badly to belong to. But the truth is, I already had a family, a real one, and it didn't require anyone's approval to exist. Cairo is thriving. He's 8 now. He still asks hard questions, still tells the truth in a way only a child can. He has this incredible sense of fairness, this ability to see through kindness that isn't honest. I used to worry he would carry the weight of that night with him, that he might feel guilty for what he said. But children are wiser than we give them credit for. One evening, I asked him if he remembered what happened at Grandma Ruth's house. He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "She was mean, and I didn't want her to hurt you again. So I told the truth." "Do you feel bad about it?" I asked gently. He looked up from his cereal and said, "Why would I feel bad for telling the truth?" That was the answer I needed. He wasn't carrying shame. He was carrying courage. And me? I finally learned that staying quiet for the sake of keeping peace only teaches the people around you that you can be mistreated without consequence. I learned that silence doesn't always protect your children. It sometimes teaches them to accept what they should reject. I thought I was being strong by keeping the peace, but real strength was allowing myself to be seen. Real strength was letting my son see what boundaries looked like in action. I also learned that motherhood is not something you earn through biology. It's something you live every single day. It's the bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the homemade lunches, the whispered encouragement before spelling tests, the arms that hold them when the world gets too loud. Cairo may not have Micah's blood, but he has his heart. He has his name. He has his protection. And that's what a real father gives. Micah and I still go to therapy together. We're learning how to rebuild the parts of our relationship that were damaged by years of unspoken resentment and avoidance. He's doing the work. I see it in how he listens now, how he checks in, how he shows up fully. And I'm learning how to trust again. Not just him, but myself, my instincts, my voice. One day, Cairo asked me, "Do you think Grandma Ruth will ever like me again?" I sat down beside him and said, "I think Grandma Ruth has to decide if she wants to love people the way they are, not the way she wishes they were. And that's something she has to work on by herself." He thought about that for a second and said, "I hope she does. But if she doesn't, it's okay. I like us just the way we are." That's the lesson I carry with me now. We don't need to fight for space at someone else's table when we're already building one of our own. A table where truth is welcome, where love doesn't come with fine print, where forgiveness isn't forced and silence isn't expected in exchange for being tolerated. That night around Ruthleen's table didn't break us. It revealed us. It showed me the depth of my son's heart. It showed me the strength hidden in my own. And it showed me that sometimes the most powerful voice in the room is the smallest one with the clearest memory. I didn't raise Cairo to be my protector, but he protected me anyway, not because I asked him to, but because love made him brave. And for that, I will always be proud. That night didn't end with applause or hugs or a big family healing moment. It ended with the truth laid bare on the table. And honestly, that was more powerful than anything I could have prayed for. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever stayed silent to keep the peace, or if someone made you feel like your love, your child, or your life wasn't enough, I hope you remember this. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need approval to be a whole family. You deserve to be safe, to be loved, and to be heard, exactly as you are. And sometimes, the boldest truth comes from the voice you least expect. Thank you for listening to our story. If it moved you, if you saw yourself in it, or if you just believe in choosing love over silence, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I read everyone, and your stories matter too. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more real, raw, and honest stories like this. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never apologize for protecting your peace.